Sure, Herbert's 100 harem. He snuck along the corridor in his silent persona. Invisible despite the light, unable to be seen with or without Axiom. When suddenly the wall imploded and a giant undead cyborg with gatling arms slams through. Herbert closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. Come on, Herbert. Just write out the report. No silly stuff. No hyperactive imaginings, even if your coffee is basically liquid lightning for how it hits your system now. He takes a few more deep breaths and continues to his report. Stealth continued unabated as numerous rooms were scanned to look for the target. Unfortunately, as the primary goal was recon and then marking a target area to be struck. This was a raid preparation, not an assassination run where he's hiding bodies in the wall, despite how freaking cool that would be, and he backspaces a few times and gets back to it. The first level was clean of suspicious activity as expected. The areas easy to access would of course be clean of anything unexpected and unusual. Thankfully, a member of the group being examined had arrived, and they were quickly followed to a room he had recently checked and cleared. He observes as the Tret woman lays her head upon the door and then turned the handle. It opened to a different room from when he had opened and examined the door. He slips in after her. No need of Axiom when her stride is long enough for him to do an entire dance routine between her steps. The previous room was a poorly optimized office space that had a thin patina of dust due to not being properly used. This one was different, dark, and with unusual paneling below him. The metal has a strange red tinge to it, and a circular symbol is painted across several of them. Circles forming a circle. A slight whisper of Axiom that is distorted, different from what he understands Axiom to feel like. He can feel it distort space. It's moving properly, but just a half degree the wrong way. Not enough to mess up the opening of the portal that follows, but enough to make it feel fundamentally different. Unless you're in the habit of paying very close attention to such things. Before she moves through the portal, he attaches a small device to the underside of her shoes. She's wearing heels, and the place the incline of the heel makes is perfect for a tiny tracker. So she gets tracked, and he leaves another tracker in the corner of the room, before leaving to check to see where he is exactly. The entire building is something out of a strange horror movie. Dark as all get out, his night vision has automatically activated, and while the color is mostly lost, the texture of the floor tells him it's the same disquieting metal. He checks the nearest two rooms, and beneath the visor and mask, his right eyebrow climbs up. Empty tanks full of lightly glowing fluid. Deactivating night vision reveals that it's glowing a pale yellow. There are no obvious control panels, but the energy signatures at the base in the microphones involved mean that it's likely voice activated. He slipped out of the room before checking the next and finding shelves with collections of data slates, all deactivated and looking almost like a bookshelf. This room gets its own tracker hidden among the slates, and he moves on. But as he opens the doorway, there is suddenly an entire army of ninjas with plasma swords and, nearly done, get back to it and then burn off the energy in an obstacle course, he says to himself and gets back to it. As he opens the doorway, there is a slight sensation of Axiom, twisted ever so slightly like the portal was, that brushes by. He fades out, and something turns. Danger senses flare, and he twists and hears the wall behind him crunch even as his curved blade comes out, and he swings. The edge bites into someone. He feels a limb extract, and there is a pair of screams. One in front, the other behind. He turns to face the unmaimed attacker, and there is a Tret there holding out a small pistol towards him. A Derringer? It has none of the indications of laser or plasma. The trick to dodging gunfire is not to dodge the gun, dodge the person. People tense up when they fire to steady their shots, even with laser and plasma, and that locks in the shot. Her finger tenses on the trigger, and he shifts to the side. The gun does not fire, and she follows him. The trigger is not the firing mechanism. The weapon is even more dangerous than expected, and he draws a knife to throw. It sinks into her neck, and then something hits him in the mid-right chest. Then his back shatters and his strength leaves him. He has just enough time before his emergency recall beacon activates to see the massive stain of blood on the back wall. Then he's back for maybe a millisecond, and everything goes gray. And that's that. I woke up again after being placed in stasis and then rejuvenated. Apparently 4 pints of my own clone blood was used to keep me alive long enough for the rejuvenation to actually save me. He muses out loud and considers. Although, next time I'll have them keep me in stasis until the clone parts are ready. Being cute is useful, but being chased down by my girls with a frilly outfit is a level of cute I don't need. Is that why you came in looking like you escaped a Victorian-era painting? A voice asks from behind, and he sees one of his fellow agents with a big mug of coffee. The novelty writing says, I'd agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong. Pretty much. So, was there any examination done on that weapon? Things are still in motion, aren't they? We have several silents scouring the area with a large number of troops underway. That doorway is a portal that leads to another portal room. Its slightly off axiom means that it slips below most radars. Of particular interest is that weapon. Turns out the trigger wasn't the trigger. It was the safety. The trigger was an implant in her hand that was linked to the weapon. He says in Herbert sighs. Well, that explains why I dodged at the wrong time. What about the payload? I didn't see it, but it still reduced my right lung and ribs to shredded meat with bone shards and chipped my spine badly according to medical. The main property of the weapon is shrinking technology. It's much smaller than what we see in endless barrages. Band has slightly different properties, but it keep going. It had 2 more shots, and from our tests it uses modified ammunition that keeps its size distortion properties until it makes impact with the target, at which point it rapidly expands. It pierced you the size of a grain of rice. It left your body the size of a softball and finished expanding to the size of a watermelon. The ammunition was sheer tungsten with axiom etchings lined with thin kutha. Well, that explains why it did so much damage. Damn, Herbert remarks. Anything else from the area? What about those strange panels? That's something that's confusing us. The composition is unknown, but everyone's reporting a disquieting feeling. It's primarily a hybrid of iron, copper, and cobalt, from my understanding. No, aren't those? They were checking to see if the paneling had anything to do with blood as I was leaving. The man says, and Herbert sighs. It probably is. The pattern is so far that it takes 1,000 little cults to find one that is a problem, and then 1,000 of those to find one that's a real problem. We've been overdue for a real problem for a while, Herbert remarks. And here I am with a squeaky voice and a lack of field duties. Someone's excited. Someone's 12 and 9 months right now. I'm getting hyper off the air itself, Herbert remarks. It's annoying. I can barely focus. The other man snorts and takes a sip of his coffee. Bet you want this stuff, don't you? I had some earlier, and I still feel like I've had an adrenal shot, Herbert says, and there's another snort. So is that all, or are you here to heckle? It's all for now, but as you know, the situation seems wrapped up. But there can always be surprises. Don't I know it, Herbert mutters. You're still here. What else is there? The location of the secondary and tertiary locations. They were in the rings. Shit. The spires are bad enough with their own laws, cultures, and demographics, which can radically shift not only one from another, but layer by layer. The plates that form the rings, though, are especially problematic because unlike the spires, they're mobile. And if they push too hard, it's entirely possible for a plate to reorient its engines and leave central space entirely. At which point, doing anything in such a place is an act of war, to say nothing of the fact that the plates having an artificial atmosphere means they're monitored and controlled. If the equipment is sensitive enough, then no amount of stealth can hide the fact there's an extra person consuming oxygen. You started off on Spire Amaru, you ended up on Galvori Plate, and the woman you tag went to Mulidi Plate. Okay, it's been a hot minute since I last studied the layout of Centris's mess of districts, but those two are fairly close to each other. They're right next to each other, but they moved that close last week. There used to be about 4 plates in between them. The man says, and Herbert considers. And no, before you ask, there was nothing odd about the request or process to move the plates. It seems to mostly be a happy coincidence. I see, Herbert says as he considers. Still, it's something to dig into further. Unless we find information to state that it's to the disadvantage of this group, we must assume it was to their advantage, meaning whoever authorized or requested the shifting may be in on it. Yes, we're on it. Right, which means, Herbert begins before his phone starts going off. Excuse me. Hello? Herbert here. His coworker takes a slow sip of the coffee as Herbert listens to the other side of the conversation and then nods. All right, I'm nearly off my shift anyways. I'll be down shortly. But if you want me in that frilly nightmare again, you'd better be ready to chase me down for it. Deal! Chimes out from the other side, loudly enough for the fully grown man to snort at the unfortunate tween boy. The call then ends and Herbert hangs up. Trouble in paradise? Far from it, aunts. Mothers and cousins are popping by to visit and help my girls with their first children. Herbert says, How is that going anyways? Half your wives don't have eyes and almost all of them have had sons. Meaning human children whose mothers looks like they walked out of a horror set. They're doing fine, actually. The children are born into the axiom, recognize their mothers by instinct, and are completely comfortable with them. Herbert says, hundreds of children simultaneously. That's insane. It is. Apparently it's odd for a whole family to have children all at once, but not unheard of or even all that uncommon. Herbert answers, The weird situation surrounding me and mine means that people are calling in backup. That place is packed. It is, Herbert replies. Still, we need to tramp down on this new group we found. They're violent, and if not linked to the Dark Cabal and its descendants, then they're of similar concern. Excuse me? A nearby voice asks, and Herbert looks to the left, then up and up and up some more, and finds Jesser looking down at him. She was okay for running information and was continuing with her healing, but still a long, long way off from being a field agent. The first bit of information about this new group has been uncovered. They call themselves the Darnaxian Concurrence. Darnaxian. I do not recognize the language. It's one of the many, many Tret tongues. It's old and was generally only used for nations or the like. It means strong, but in reference to people as a group. The old language was very clunky for those who were not native speakers. I see. So they're using a name that means strength and is often used for nations. Crazed nationals? Is there a Darnaxian nation that's been insulted within the past 500 years? Several hundred, but none stand out, Jess here says. I see, and Herbert begins to say before a lopen finger caresses the top of his head. Sorry, you're... Get it out of your system, he tells her as he lets his arms go limp before being grabbed and hugged tightly by the large wolf woman who can no longer resist the cuteness.